anything. That's all the left talks about is trans. They're trying to trans our children. They're trying to trans everything. I'm so sick of their wokeness. Nah, this is not kind of video. This is not that kind of video. So why do I hate the left? Is the question of the night. Why do I hate the left? Now, to be clear, saying that I hate the left is a little bit strong. And as usual, my problems are really focused on the thought leaders or the influencers, especially the members of what I call the parasite class.
Caution, speed trap.
So a lot of the issues I have with the left comes from the influencers that influence the left, right? Let me explain how this works in America. I don't know about other countries, but this is how it works in America, right? In America, most people, like myself, have a lot on our plate. We have jobs, we have families, we have relationships, we have responsibilities. So we have limited time. We all got just one life, and it goes by so quickly. So what that means is we don't have a lot of time, even those of us that are political, to get too involved and engaged with politics. And again, I'm including those who are technically engaged with politics. People like myself, right? I watch a lot of politics. I think a lot about politics. I'm certainly much more aware than the average person by far. But even me, because this is not my job, I don't do these videos for a living, right? So my actual job is my priority and my other responsibilities. So even with me being as engaged as I am with politics, I should, meaning there's a lot of stuff I don't know, I don't understand, I'm not aware of. So what that means is I have to rely on others, in particular political influencers, to help me to fill in the gap, right? Now, because our media is so filled with propaganda, I don't have a single source, right? So I have to listen to a lot of different sources. A little bit of liberal corporate media. Like, let's talk about an ideal, not necessarily what I'm doing right now, right? So the ideal would be a little bit of corporate liberal media, a little bit of corporate conservative media, a little bit here and there. I mean, right-wing media has gotten so bad lately, so it's really hard to find anything of any substance, but you want to listen to a little bit of right-wing independent media here and there. And then a little bit of left-wing independent media. So you want to get a little bit of progressive media and perhaps some independent channels that are a little bit more further to the left than the progressive media. So for example, for progressive media, you might be listening to somebody like a Majority Report or something like I hate to say it, but Brian Tyler Cohen. I mean, he's a big Democratic Party propagandist, but like I said, there's no source that you could just like, oh, this is where I'm getting my news from, right? Right. So there's no real good like, oh, I'm listening to this particular source. So you need to listen to all these different sources because everyone, for the most part, is only giving you a little piece of reality. So if you want to be fully informed of what's happening in the country and the world, you need to get as many little pieces of reality to paint the full picture, right? So Brian Tyler Cohen, as bad as he might be, gives you part of that picture. There's certain things that he's really good at that you're gonna get from him, right? There's certain things that even the Young Turks, as bad as they are, that you're gonna get from them that you might not get in other points. You get some things from Adam Mockler, some things from Luke Beasley, some things from Fox News. I mean, I think Fox News is very dangerous. A lot of trash on there. But, depending on what show you're watching, because Fox News has a lot of shows, right? Like, I don't think you're going to get anything of value from a Tucker Carlson. You're not getting anything of value from Ingram, whatever her name is. These are like just insane people, right? But there's other shows that you get, like The Five. Interestingly enough, as bad as a lot of those folks on that show is, you do have the balance of the liberal representation as well as the conservative representation. So again, little bits and pieces. But let's get focused back on the topic of this video, the whole thing. Why do I hate the left? And again, I don't hate the left, really. I'm not really an emotional person, so I'm generally not going to hate someone that I don't know. That's a strong emotion to have for a stranger, right? So whether it's the audience that's watching the propaganda in left-wing media, or it's the actual, parasite class folks, the actual influencers, the ones, and when I say parasite class, I'm talking about just the ones that are just, which is a lot of them, right? Anything for views. They don't care about substance. They don't care about what's happening in the country. It's all about clicks. Say what the audience wants to hear. Those type of people. So the problem that I have with the left, when you hear me complaining about the left, is the lack of seriousness. But a lot of the lack of seriousness, again, comes from influence. That's why I started giving you the context of how politics works in this country in terms of people not having time to engage enough. So they rely on these influencers to keep them informed. But the influencers overwhelmingly are unserious and just focused on views and, basically, ironically, capitalism, because that's what they're doing, right? It's a capitalistic type of a business, right? You're trying to make profit, right? They want to make sure that they're bringing in more than they're spending, right? All these channels spend a certain amount of money, right? They have their overhead. They want to make sure that they're bringing in more than they're spending, significantly enough. They're big enough to have staff, enough to pay everybody, and on top of paying everybody, some profit on top, which, that would be the salary of the person who's at the top who owns the channel, for example, right? So the priority is more so on the clicks and views, which will be able to sustain the brand and the channel, right? So for example, let me just illustrate what I'm really talking about, like where this gets to be really bad. So right now, we have a lot of folks in left-wing media that are all animated and democracy is under attack and we may never have another election and fascism this and fascism that and Trump may not leave office and Gestapo something something, Nazi something something. So that's all fine and good. But if I were wrong in my assessment that the left as a movement is unserious, which is my beef with them, if I were wrong and the left was actually serious, then if we go back, first of all, let's start off with the basics, because I know how these people work, right? The first response is, if Kamala Harris had won, Majority Report would have been calling her out for her missteps. The Young Turks would have been calling her out for her missteps. Even, definitely not Brian Tyler Cohen. Even maybe like a David Pakman might be calling her out for her missteps. That's not the question, right? Unlike in the right-wing media, where it's very rare, it's like it's a special occasion for them to call out their side, right? It's normal for left-wing channels to call out their side, right? When Biden was president, left-wing media saw a chance that Trump could win. And according to them, they realized how dangerous that would be. Some are still surprised about how dangerous it ended up being. But even then, they would have said, this would be very bad. So realizing how high the stakes are, these same people were at the same time calling out Joe Biden on multiple things. Campaign promises he didn't deliver on, right? Excuses that he would make for things. You know, when it comes to money for war, no problem, right? When it comes to things for the corporate donors, no problem. But when it comes to things for the people, all of a sudden, you know, there's excuses, whatever. It was a common thing to see left-wing media calling out Joe Biden. So I would expect if Kamala Harris had won, we would see that as well. The problem is they wouldn't have done it enough for it to really matter. It would be enough for the audience to feel like, okay, these guys are really good. They're doing a good job. They're calling out their side.
Caution.
They're
Speed trap.
holding the Democrats accountable because, you know, I voted for Democrats and I'm not happy with them. And here are my influencers that I trust, and they're calling them out as well. The thing about it is, if Kamala Harris had won, I think just about every win that she would have had, and there would have been wins, you would see a lot of cheerleading. Brian Tyler Cohen would be cheerleading. Definitely like an Adam Mockler and a Luke Beasley will be cheerleading. Now, an Adam Mockler and Luke Beasley might, under their breath, make some sort of comments about Kamala Harris could do better with X, Y, and Z. But they're not going to do a video about it. There's not going to be a video from Luke Beasley or Adam Mockler saying Kamala Harris is failing her voters. The Young Turks, absolutely. Breaking Points, wouldn't be surprised. But David Pakman, I don't think so. Brian Tyler Cohen, absolutely not. Right? So the problem there would end up being that left-wing media overall would not be making enough noise about Kamala Harris in terms of her failures. And I guess I can articulate that a little bit better. It's one thing if you have commentary on her actions, right? She does something good, you say this is good. Good job, Kamala Harris. If Trump had won, he never would have done this. So this is great.
Your marked location.
If she does something and it sucks, like maybe corporate interests get in her ear and she does something that's bad for the people, and then you go and you say, hey man, I don't like this thing that Kamala Harris is doing. It's really not what she claims it is. It's not for us. It's for her donors. Okay, that's fine. I'll give you credit for that. Those are good things to do. The problem is,
Caution. Speed trap.
this does not fly with the rhetoric we hear now and the rhetoric we've been hearing in the last few years about the stakes, right?
Speed trap.
Things being as dire as we have been told by left-wing media and the audience of left-wing media. Things being as dire as they claim, simply commenting on the good things that Kamala Harris does and the bad things that she does, and that's mainly it, that's not enough, right? Like, I look at a person like a Kyle Kulinski who talked about Joe Biden exceeded expectations. right? So when we talk about the issue I have with the left, it is that kind of juvenile, just like low IQ, just surface level thinking that we see among the left-wing influencers. That the big problem I have with it is what's on the other side of that. If you're a person, if the people are relying on the influencers to really inform them about what's happening, and the influencers are people like Kyle Kulinski who say Joe Biden exceeded his expectations, right? And then talks about Joe Biden being historically good in his eyes. On the other side of this perspective and this type of rhetoric is a second Trump term, is a future, wow.
Caution.
Holy shit. I just realized how much Ron DeSantis just fell off the map. I had to pause to remember his name. You remember a time when Ron DeSantis was like the guy every day? Ron DeSantis did this, Ron DeSantis did that. When's the last time anyone has said anything about Ron DeSantis? Holy shit. And I don't know, maybe he doesn't have a chance. But whatever, let's just say in the future there's a Ron DeSantis presidency. Right? That's what's on the other side of focusing on historic. Let me clarify. If you hire me for a job and I never show up for work, right? The day that I finally show up for work is historically a massive improvement, right? I was 100% of the time not showing up, right? And now I'm showing up for the first time, right? That's a massive improvement. We went from 0 to like, I'm here. Only one day, but I'm here. Now, hopefully you can see the problem with this, right? That's the problem with that Kyle Kulinski thinking of, oh, he's the most progressive president, my lifetime, or, oh, he's exceeded my expectations, right? Exceeded your expectations when your expectations were far too low, right? Because you know how bad the Democratic Party is, so you set your expectations like super, super low, and then you say, oh, he exceeded my expectations. It's like, again, with the hiring thing. You hire a guy, and you're like, man, that guy's a loser, man. He's never going to show up for work. He's never going to even show up. Trust me. I don't think he's ever going to show up. And then the guy shows up one day, right? And you're like, wow. I didn't expect him to show up at all. He really exceeded my expectations. That's what Kyle Kulinski did, basically. Right? Who, listen to me clearly, who let the dogs out? No. Who gives a fuck that Joe Biden showed up for work and you expected he wouldn't even show up one day? He showed up for work one day and you expected him to show up 0 days. Or he showed up 3 days and you expect he's going to show up one day and he never come back. So he showed up 3 times more than you expected. Who gives a fuck? This is juvenile, low IQ, surface level politics, right? This is the way a mature person thinks about politics, in contrast to the 15-year-old Kyle Kulinski thought process, right? The way that you look at things in a mature way is you look at what it is that people need, right? You look at what it is that people actually need, right? So in terms of housing, in terms of, in terms of income, you focus on what the actual needs are, as opposed to focusing on what the last guy did or what the last 5 guys did, the last 10 guys did. Irrelevant, right? Because the problem is that there has been a massive problem in terms of what has been delivered by our politicians, right? Housing, healthcare, fair wages, right? Income equality. So you need to look at what the problems are and what is required to solve them. And when you evaluate a politician, the evaluation should be based on how they meet what is needed, right? How they meet, how close do they come to what is actually needed? Because you want to talk about democracy and housing and this country's in a serious thing and people are struggling and this and that and whatever, then the only metric you should be focused on is this is what the people need and this is what the politician has delivered. Failed. I don't care that the last 10 politicians were delivering this much and now we're getting this much. No. And the other juvenile way to think about things is, people say things like, you can't get everything, right? They say you can't get everything that you want, right? That's not how things work. Things take time and, you have to have patience. It's not magic, right? We understand this, right? But I don't know if I could give an analogy to sort of illustrate, because I don't think I'm clearly articulating the point that I'm making. I guess it's you're lost in the desert and you are severely dehydrated, right? And you're in a group of people and you have one leader that through their leadership, we end up getting everybody, 2 ounces of water each, right? Obviously, that's not going to cut it. So we're all seriously in trouble. We're headed to dying very quickly because 2 ounces each, that's not going to do it, right? The next guy gets you 2.5 ounces, right? The next guy gives you 2 ounces. Next guy, 1.5 ounces. You're going backwards. Wow. Then you have Joe Biden comes in and he gets everybody, 3.5 ounces, right? This is more water than any of the other leaders, right? And maybe when Joe Biden came in, you thought, man, at most Joe Biden's going to get us 2.9 ounces, right? But he gets us 3 ounces. Wow. Right? This is historic. Joe Biden is he's delivered the most water in our lifetime. But here's the problem. Everybody needs at least, I don't know what the number would be. Let's just say 16 ounces a day. I don't know what the numbers, but let's just say 16 ounces a day to survive. Like, that's what we really, really need. At least 16 ounces, right? And Joe Biden gave us 3, right? But you would never understand any of this because if you watch the left-wing media channels, they don't talk about it in this way most of the time, right? So you're going to be looking in tunnel vision and you're going to be like, well, if so Joe Biden wins in 2020, right? If Trump had won in 2020, you could say, hey man, we would have gotten probably 1 ounce of water every day, right? He wouldn't have delivered hardly anything. 1 ounce a day, that's ridiculous. We probably die under Trump, right? Because of Joe Biden, we got 3 ounces, 3 times what we would have gotten with Trump, right? And that's the rhetoric. That's what you're hearing. Joe Biden delivered 3 times as much as Trump. Trump would have barely whatever, right? And Joe Biden is delivering more water than any of the other leaders. But again, you need a minimum of 16 ounces, right? So that's the way I look at politics, right? I want the leader that's going to deliver the 16 ounces, right? I am focused on what is needed, what is necessary. I don't give a fuck what Joe Biden did, or Obama did, or Clinton did, or Reagan did. I don't give a fuck about no dead presidents unless they're in my wallet, right? I don't give a fuck about previous presidents that's alive. They're not in office now. I don't give a fuck what they did, right? So when I'm measuring a current president or future president, I'm not going to be like, now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying there's no value in recognizing things like certain improvements, right? I mean, 3 ounces of water is certainly more than 2.5 ounces, and hey man, we'll take all the water we can get, right? Because we about to die. We're about to die of thirst. So we'll take every bit of water. So you only give us half an ounce more? Well, we're grateful for that. I can appreciate and acknowledge and respect that. However, I think the mature thing is to focus on what's most important. What's most important is not getting an extra half an ounce or an extra ounce or an extra 2 ounces. What's really important is not dying of thirst, right? That's what we're up against. Dying of thirst. So my focus is on getting that minimum of 16 ounces. So from a leader, from Joe Biden, from anybody, from future leaders, the way I judge them is about how close they come to what is needed, right? Don't try to be, compete with dead presidents. Don't compete with the previous president. We don't give a fuck about them, right? Because if we still don't have affordable health care, I don't give a fuck about you gave a couple more ounces, right? People are dying because they don't have health care. They're dying because they don't have health care, right? What did Joe Biden do about getting us affordable health care? Now, I believe he did have some wins that are healthcare related, but again, half an ounce more, an extra ounce, right? We're a country of 350 million people. I don't know what the numbers are of how many people are struggling with healthcare issues, but I can tell you the numbers are pretty serious, right? And I don't think we got anything pretty serious from Joe Biden to address the issue in a significant manner. Now, again, if you're focused on compared to previous presidents, then go ahead, celebrate that Joe Biden did more for president, another president. But I don't give a fuck about contrasting current presidents with previous presidents. What I care about is what the American people need. I care about the millions of Americans who don't have health care. I care about the millions of Americans who work so hard and can barely pay their rent. Right? That's what I care about. Right? So that's one part of the greater picture. But again, the most important thing I think to get from that is,
in 1 mile,
because of this mentality, because of this thought process, it gets us Donald Trump term 2. Right? If left-wing media, right, and again we acknowledge that they did press Joe Biden to some degree, but if they had pressed him to the same degree that they're pressing Trump right now, perhaps it could have gotten so bad for Joe Biden so bad for the Democrats that on average, the Democrats felt like they couldn't win their next elections. Now, a lot of us focus on the president, focus on the executive branch. You can't look at it that way. You need Chuck Schumer, AOC, Pelosi, right? You need these top Democrats in blue safe areas. You need them to be terrified. Now let the Young Turks tell it and other people tell it. You think they're terrified right now, but I don't think so. If I were a Democrat right now, I'd be feeling pretty good.
In 0.2 miles.
That's how bad the system is. Democrats are very unpopular right now. And the country overall is not happy with where things are going. And in that moment, if I were a Democrat, I'll be feeling really good right now. Now you listen to Democrats on media, whatever, and they talk about stuff like, oh, we're unpopular and the voters this, but I think most of them behind the scenes, they're good. I don't think they're really that nervous, right? And if you don't know why they will be feeling good right now, you have no idea how American politics works. The reason that I will be feeling good as a Democrat right now is let's just be real, right? If you're a New Yorker, after 4 years of Donald Trump and all the craziness that he's doing, and you're on the left, are you really, if you're in her district, are you really not going to vote for her? Are you really going to let the Republican, like let's say a Republican runs against AOC. If you live in AOC's district, like no matter how unpopular the Democrats are, and they're very unpopular, and they're failures, and this and that, and empty promises, and whatever. When election day comes, are you really comfortable sitting back and letting a Republican take AOC's seat? I don't think so, right? And the same applies, if you're in Pelosi's district or whatever, you can complain all you want, but when election day comes, are you really going to vote for the Republican?
Then use the right lane to turn right on US
I don't think so, right? The reality is, the more insane the Republicans are, the worse that Trump is. Inhumane, the savagery, the just childish behavior, and all the craziness that he does. The more he does that, it basically makes it easy for Democrats to win, because they generally don't deliver enough. And then when the alternative is the insane Republican Party, right? They've allowed Trump to take over and MAGA to take over, so that party has just gotten so extreme that, as disappointed as voters are, enough of them will show up at the polls that if you are, in a safe district, you're good. Right? You are good. And then what happens? When you're in a safe district and you win because of the Republican insanity, right? Then the Democrats continue to deliver just barely enough, just enough to get by, which again opens the door for another insane Republican presidency. And you see all the craziness happening right now, and that's under the buffoon Donald Trump. I'm telling you, mark my words, the path that we're on, you are going to see one day there's going to be someone who is going to make you wish for the days of Donald Trump. Think about how extreme of a statement that is. and I'm not being hyperbolic at all whatsoever, but think about how extreme of a statement that is to say. I mean, I think most of you
Stay to
probably
the
can't
left.
even fathom
Then
that.
turn
The
left on
idea
US 9W.
of wishing for Trump, right? Because again, you don't fully understand how politics works in this country. And you therefore don't realize how good you have it. And trust me, you have it very, very good. Let me just quickly illustrate. Again, Trump is a buffoon. Being a buffoon means it's easy to see what he's doing, easy for the media to see what he's doing and report on what he's doing, right? So the voters hear about it, and then you get protests and people fighting back, and that results in you know, things changing and you know, and then let's say Democrats are able to somehow win the next election, then you know they can do indictments and people can get charged and blah 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 blah, right? So the thing about it is, and I'm being an old man right now. I totally lost my chain of thought. What was I saying? So holy crap, it's been a long day, guys. Pause, and we're back. I know what I was saying. So I was talking about how good you have it now. So because Trump is such a buffoon, it's easy to spot. The media knows about it, so the media talks about it, so people are aware of it, so people can take action. Now, imagine a future president who is as corrupt and dishonest as Donald Trump, but who's not a buffoon. You got to think about it this way. As much of a buffoon as Donald Trump is, so we're able to figure out so much of what he's doing, he was still able to win a second election after all he's done, January 6th and everything else. Again, that's with us knowing and seeing it, because again, it's easy to see what he's doing. So the guy who is as dishonest, as corrupt as Trump, but is not a buffoon, someone who has strategy, right? What kind of damage could they do? If Trump could do so much damage in our faces with us knowing about it, right, and us fighting back and the news talking about it, what happens with a guy who is just as bad as Trump, but the media doesn't even have a clue of what's going on, right? The media doesn't even know what's going on because they're so slick about it. Behind the scenes, very strategic. They say the right stuff in public, right? So the rhetoric is perfect to where people don't even, like, they look legit, right? And think about how many people, independents who moved towards Trump, even Obama, I almost said a Biden, Obama voters who went to Trump, right? So with Trump being such an overt buffoon, and they're able to pull people from Obama to Trump, from AOC to Trump, right? Independents to Trump, Latinos to Trump, with him being a buffoon. What happens when someone in the future is just as dishonest and corrupt as Trump, but they're not a buffoon? How many Latinos could they pull to their side? How many Biden voters could they pull to their side? So you're talking about, because Trump got, what did he get? He got the majority in the last election. Can you imagine a person as corrupt as Trump getting a supermajority? Right? So they win the House and the Senate, right? So you have a Republican president wins the House and the Senate with a massive margin, right? So you don't have this nonsense where, you know, a small group of people can sabotage whatever. So this president basically can really, really do whatever they want to do, right? And the stuff that they do is well thought out and super, super clever. So they can pass a bunch of bills and the media doesn't even understand what they're really up to. So by the time you start to realize what's really going on, oh my goodness, imagine the level of damage that could be done in the darkness. Trump did so much damage in the light. Imagine the kind of damage that could be done in the darkness. Right? So someone like that, one day as things finally start to get revealed, way past the time like where like you could actually do something about it. So now it's like it's too far gone and you're just finding out about it. And you realize the severe level of damage that this person has caused. And then you look at Trump and you're like, Trump did a lot of really bad things. And back then I was like, man, this is really awful. But you see the limiting scope of what he's doing because, you know, stuff is getting blocked and whatever, and it's taking too much time. And then, you know, like let's say they lose right now the Senate in the midterm. They lose the midterm, so they lose power, so that his damage was limited to just 1 year. Imagine a guy that's able to stay with a majority for 4 years. And they pass so many bills that are under the radar. People are too focused on their lives and focused on the day-to-day, and they're not seeing crazy headlines about, oh, they did this and they did that. Like, because the stuff is so well done. Whenever they do a press conference, they're saying the right stuff. They're not doing all the nonsense on Twitter and trolling people and AI videos and whatever. They present themselves well-spoken, professional. They speak, you know, or they were able to speak to the middle class people, the people in the South. They're able to speak to the liberals, whatever, right? So they have the mass appeal, cross ideological appeal, right? And they seem to be saying and doing all the right things, right? But behind the scenes, some very, very dark things are happening, but they're being done in such a clever way that even the media isn't picking up on it. So I think that if you're going to be mad at Donald Trump and mad at what he's doing and damage to the country, you got to be mad at the left as well, right? Without a weak, unserious left-wing movement, which is certainly much more serious than the right, but again, I always say it's not a competition. I don't care that you're better than the right wing, right? What I care about is the results. And the results of the current left-wing movement is a second Trump presidency, a future DeSantis presidency, and much more pain and suffering for millions of Americans, right? So I hate the failures of the left-wing movement, the unseriousness of the left-wing movement, and I also hate the sort of look at this guy rolling in his my back. All right, you do your thing, man. I also hate the sort of they got a little MAGA streak to them as well, like the evil landlord thing I've talked about for years, where you know, the average left winger has listened to TYT and whoever for so long that someone like me can't even talk some sense to them, right? They already have their preconceived notions about landlords and all this kind of stuff. And you know, could I ever have a conversation with them and get them to see the problems in the policies they push for and let them see outside of the bubble? Nope, good luck. I'm gonna get an instant shutdown. And part of the reason I will give credit is that the left wing is used to the only or main opposition that they have are bad faith actors from the right and these contrarian, dishonest people on the supposed left, far left folks who, you know, under Biden, They had every day it's how bad the liberals are, how bad the Democrats are, nothing to say about the Republicans, nothing to say about Trump, downplaying the dangers of Trump, downplaying the dangers of Project 2025. Um, you know what I mean? So I think it's very problematic that these are the only people that generally, if you're a left winger, you probably, it's very unlikely that you've heard any good faith critiques of the left, right? You get lies and propaganda from right wingers, very unserious, right? So that's what you're used to. You get the same kind of thing from the far left folks, right? Revolutionary Blackout Network, right? And then the other place you get critiques from would be naive liberals that really don't know what they're talking about. They're not really politically involved. There's so much education that they need to even have an opinion about this stuff. So, you know, they will critique you saying you guys are too extreme and this and that and blah, 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 but they just don't know what the hell they're talking about. So what is the impact of that? So all you ever hear is people agreeing with you, and there's no one that disagrees with you that's would seem to be worth listening to. You got right-wing liars, you got far left liars, and you got clueless normie liberals. What's the impact? The impact is exactly what you hear from somebody like Kyle Kulinski, right? We're always right. We're right on everything, you know. We come to the right conclusion, and then you know the rest of them they come to our conclusion eventually. But we were right first. We're right about everything. Sound like Trump. Sound like Trump. Trump is the guy who says he's right about everything, right? That's the conclusion you come to when everybody that critiques you is basically some version of a clown. But that's very problematic, right? What happens to the, I can't think of a better analogy, I don't know, well, like a doctor who all you hear are people that are like, you're great, everything you do is great, your stuff is so awesome, right? And every single person that critiques you is bad faith, dishonest, or just clueless, right? What is a person to think? As a doctor, I'm going to think I'm the shit, right? I'm the shit, obviously, right? If everybody, most of the people are agreeing with me, saying I'm a great doctor, and everybody who says I'm not a good doctor, they're clowns, then obviously I'm a great doctor. That is the American left wing, right? Everybody they talk to agrees with them. The people who disagree are clowns. And it's not just like that's how they feel. That's legitimate, right? You don't have a large group of people who are both informed about the politics so they can know what they're talking about to critique in the first place, and also have integrity so they're actually critiquing with integrity. You know, the right wing, what they'll do is pretty much anything that the left is pushing for, it's not going to work, it's bad, it's communism, whatever, it's not going to work. You're not going to hear from the right wing saying, I see what you're trying to do, right? And I respect what you're trying to do. This is good to, you know, healthcare, whatever it is, right? However, you need to do it in a little bit a different way, right? If you're going to do this, right, you want to have universal healthcare, what you need to do is you need to include an X, Y, and Z. Like this, you're not going to get that from the right wing. They're not going to give you a modification of what you're talking about. Their whole thing is complete dismissal. Not acknowledge anything positive about anything the left is saying. It's all communism and trans people and DEI, it's woke, right? That's all you're going to get from them. And again, the liberals, they don't know what they're talking about. And then the far left, they're just as dishonest as the right wing. So it's kind of like, how can the left wing be better if there's not really a large amount of people with the knowledge and integrity who are actually critiquing him and saying, hey guys, I like what you're trying to do, but perhaps you should do it in a little bit of a different way. Now, I understand that some people are going to disagree with you. They're going to say that's exactly what happens because the left is not a monolith. You have people who are progressives who believe in a certain way of doing things. You have people that are more far left that believe in sort of a more extreme way of doing things. But I think that is not quite what I'm talking about, right? Because, for example, let's say progressives push for a housing policy. The housing policy might actually not be too bad, right? But there might be some things that are actually pretty problematic that need to be addressed, right? But to me, you're not going to have a progressive talking about a good housing policy that may have some serious problems. You're not going to get far left people saying, hey, progressives, this is a good housing policy, but you should change a few things. Nah, they're going to look like, this housing policy is a junk and it's just like, it's the corporate things and it's going to go to whatever, and capitalism, blah, 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 blah. The housing should just be completely free. Like that's what, it's like they're coming from a completely different camp, right? And I guess the same thing goes both ways, right? I don't know that necessarily you're going to have a group of people that are critiquing maybe the far left. They have some idea, whatever it is, let's just have Medicare for all, whatever their idea is. There's no one that's really good faith that's going to say, well, hey, man, I like what you're doing here, but here's, and thing about it is, why would anyone want to do that, right? Is there any profit in it, right? The profit is in the radical, like aggressive, like, you're a communist, and then like the name calling and whatever. Like that's where the money is, right? So, who's gonna make money from making videos talking about, hey, progressives, this is a nice housing policy, but maybe you should tweak a few things. You know what I mean? Like, and that's the whole point. That's the whole problem. The media business is a business, right? These folks that are making these videos, they're making it for profit, right? It's not about helping the country and moving us forward and informing the audience. It's about getting the clicks ultimately, and therein lies the problem. Anyway, so that's why I hate the left, but I don't actually mean I hate the left. I guess more accurately, I am severely disappointed with the American left, and I certainly don't associate myself with them. Put a gun to my head, I am left-wing any day of the week. Put a gun to my head, any day of the week, I'm left-wing. I'm a leftist, yeah! Right, but with no gun to my head, no thank you. The right wing, I don't know, man. I guess we're all gonna die at some point, right? You put a gun to my head about me being a right winger, so I'm gonna go and defend pedophiles. Jock is in the house. You have met the enemy, and it's Carl. Yeah, man. I don't know. I mean, I guess one thing I'm really disappointed about with my channel is that I never did those live streams that I was supposed to do with where I was going to do some panels. It's just my life has been crazy with the house and everything, and I'm just not getting back to normal. So maybe that'll finally come to pass, but because I really want to hear from conservatives, because I just don't understand how at this point you cannot be like me, a political dissident. I mean, the movement is basically a movement of protecting pedophiles, not hyperbole. Like that is essentially what they're doing, right? Knowingly or not, that is what the movement is really about at this point. I mean, look who the leader of the movement is, and look at what he's doing right now. Look at what his allies are doing right now. And the thing about it is the MAGA has taken over the whole thing. It's not like before you could say you had like normie Republicans and then you had like MAGA. Like the whole thing is MAGA now. And MAGA is a movement of protecting pedophiles. So again, gun to my head, I'm a left wing any day. I will associate with the left wing. I'll even go buy a Black Lives Matter flag. Right? But the right wing, I'm sorry, man. There's got to be red lines, man. And protecting pedophiles, I can't do it. I just can't do it, man. I can't do it. You know, before with the Epstein thing, you know, I could say, you know, small government, and, you know, Second Amendment, you know, we got to stop tyranny, you know, and then, you know, abortion, you know, I mean, who's to say when life begins? I mean, it's, you know, like I could go through the motions, but once y'all started defending pedophiles, I'm out. I am out. But that being said, I'd really like to talk to conservatives now and have them explain to me how they could stand for this at this point. I mean, I would anticipate that you couldn't have that conversation. I mean, how could you? It's going to be a what about thing. It's going to be a deflection thing. It's going to be summer of love, whatever, and this and that. Because I don't know how you could have a good faith conversation, you know, and explain how you're supporting Trump in 2026, how you support MAGA in 2026, how you could ever vote for another Republican until MAGA is excised from the party. I don't know. I don't see how anyone could, in good faith, defend that. The only option must be, again, deflection, circular, whatever. What about this and Joe Biden that and blah blah blah. I just don't see anything else coming from it. But I would at least like to try, right? So I used to have conservative subscribers. I think they're all gone at this point. Just like how when Black Lives Matter was going on, I was calling it out and the left wing wasn't really interested in hearing what I had to say. Now I'm doing what I've always done, telling the raw truth. And now, you know, the conservatives one by one have disappeared. But I would like to have a panel, you know, have Jock, have you on there, and have some of the other people on there. But, you know, I don't know. I will still, you know, I will still try. I will still try. I won't give any promises because I know how my roller coaster life always is. But all I can say is I'm definitely much closer now, massively closer now to making something like that happen than I have been for years at this point. So we shall see. They just turn a blind eye. No, but I'm saying if I engage with them, right? I mean, turning a blind eye would be how they live with themselves. But if confronted and I am, you know, good faith and honest and I listen and I'm willing to hear them out, I just don't know how the conversation would go. I mean, I guess I could see you'd have to be massively clueless, and that, I guess that wouldn't be, I mean, there's a lot of people that are clueless in this country, right, regardless of ideology. So I guess that would be a way. So not just deflection or whatever. You could be so clueless that you believe so much stuff that Trump has said, and all the excuses, like you just super gullible. I don't know, man, but there's this thing called, what's it called, willingly ignorant. What's the line between willingly ignorant and someone just ignorant? I don't know. I don't know. It's all complicated. So like I said, I would just at least like to try and see how the conversation goes, even though I'm afraid I'm afraid what the results would be. But at least I'd like to give people the opportunity to speak for themselves and explain themselves and explain how this makes sense and how they could still support this in 2026. Anyway, on that note, we need to see you on Piers. Oh man, oh man, me on Piers Morgan. I don't know how that would work. Um, that show is so ridiculous. I would rather. I don't know. My instincts tell me I'd rather be on one of those independent media debate channels. Um, I've seen a couple of them where they have like some, conservatives and some left wing. I think Destiny does some, and there's some other guys that do some. Um, I would rather be on something like that, but I'm really politically homeless, man. Like, I mean, I don't know. I shouldn't think so negatively, Maybe I go on one of those panels and there's some part of the audience that actually can listen to me and understand what I'm saying. But I feel like anybody who's like left wing or progressive, they're gonna see me as like, oh, I'm a right winger, or it's just gonna be so like black and white, right? I am going against the grain, and oh, I'm being contrarian, or I'm just trying to be different, and it's just like I really struggle with seeing a situation where I go on a show like that, and obviously the conservatives are not going to agree with me. That's an obvious thing. But the thing is, I feel like the left wing, I have a trouble seeing them actually hearing me out and trying to understand my points, rather than just completely shutting down, like, no, this is and what is it? Like, for example, when I talk about Kyle Kalinske and his exceeding expectations comment, I can expect them to say the same talking points of, it's hard and it's not that easy and it takes time and you gotta be patient and incrementalism is better than in nothing and. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Thanks for watching. This is the Baby Channel, and until next time. I don't even remember my outro. I'm so tired. Sorry, guys. It's been a long day. I'm not gonna bore you with the details, but until next time.